Payday the Heist, or just Payday, released back in 2011, introducing the world to the infamous Payday gang, or more specifically Dallas, Hoxton, Chains, and Wolf. Following its commercial success, Payday has spawned two sequels, namely Payday 2, which came out in 2013, and now Payday 3, which is due to be released on September 21st, 2023. But how exactly has the game evolved over time? And how has the ability to execute the perfect heist fundamentally changed? To get to the bottom of this and get a better picture of how Payday has developed, let's dig into the Payday franchise's history and do a little bit of comparing and contrasting. Ready? Let's begin. Payday the Heist didn't really receive rave reviews upon its initial release back in October 2011, but if you take a look at its score on Steam right now, it currently holds a 92% rating. What really makes the original Payday so good is that it focuses on gritty realism and creating a level of tension that makes you feel like you're actually robbing a bank in real life. Let's get something straight here. Just because Payday the Heist is the first game in the franchise doesn't mean that it's inferior or the worst. Far from it. In many ways, it's a very different game from what Payday 2 is now, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. Anyway, in Payday, there's only the 4 original gang members and there's no real story, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The emphasis here is on fulfilling your role as either an assault specialist, sharpshooter, technician, or guy running support, and working closely with your teammates to ensure that everything goes off without a hitch. Everything is way more serious and cinematic, and you'll really need to watch yourself and exercise extreme caution lest you end up getting taken down or messing up a vital step during the heist. The thing is, even on easier difficulties, the original Payday is pretty challenging, and you'll probably find the hardest difficulty, which is called Overkill 145+, extremely punishing. So is Payday the Heist good? Yes, and it's definitely a whole lot of fun. But is it a particularly well-designed game? No, not really. There's some serious issues related to weapon balancing, the AI does some really weird stuff with pathing more often than not, and some heists like Heat Street and Greenbridge are pretty mid at best or plain awful at worst, though this is almost certainly not an opinion shared by all Payday fans. The truth of the matter is that Payday the Heist is the first game in the franchise, so while it's got problems with gameplay and some inconsistencies, this isn't exactly something that's unexpected. However, the original Payday does have a palpable atmosphere and certainly evokes feelings of nostalgia thanks to its cinematic style. And yeah, the graphics may be a little left of center and even dated now, but for all its flaws, Payday the Heist is still a game that's enjoyed by many fans across the world. Payday really does have a way of roping you in and keeping you entertained, so even though there were a limited number of heists in the original game, there's high replay value and the opportunity to experience heists differently by assuming different roles and making different decisions. It's a winning formula and is still the cornerstone of the franchise if you ask me. So how about Payday 2? According to some sources, it was actually a lot like the original Payday when it was first launched, but years of updates and more than 60 DLCs have changed Payday 2 into a very different animal. In this respect, it's a little hard to compare Payday the Heist to Payday 2 since you have to consider what incarnation of the latter you're talking about. What fans do seem to agree on though is that the overall gameplay in Payday 2 is better, but at the same time, it's significantly easier than Payday the Heist, especially on lower difficulty levels. That said, there are more difficulty levels in Payday 2 to compensate for this, which is something many fans don't really seem to take into account for the most part. Payday 2 does de-emphasize teamwork a wee bit, though it's still a good idea to stick together and help each other out. But one area in which this sequel is superior to Payday the Heist is stealth. Yes indeed. Stealth has been developed from something that was a fairly rudimentary background feature in the original Payday into something that can be used to complete a heist from start to finish. According to the official wiki, about half of Payday 2's heists can be completed using stealth, meaning you can finish a job entirely undetected. You obviously need to try avoid being seen by crouching and keeping a low profile, but using silencers, sneaking around cameras, and dodging guards are all part of the experience. In this sense, gameplay is undeniably more dynamic in Payday 2, so if you're someone who wants to try relying entirely on your inability to be noticed, this is really great. Another thing that many fans really like about Payday 2 is that there are over 100 different weapons to choose from, which is substantially higher than Payday the Heist's 14 or so. Admittedly, many of these became available in the form of DLCs, as did many cosmetic items, characters, masks, and heists. I think you get the idea. If you like the intensity, difficulty, and relative simplicity of Payday the Heist, then Payday 2 probably feels like quite a departure from the first game. However, the sheer amount of content and the community that's built up around Payday 2 over the years do make it really worthwhile, especially from a replay perspective. While it may have resembled Payday the Heist more closely upon its launch, Payday 2 has really evolved into a totally new animal that many fans absolutely love and others naturally find quite problematic. But what can you expect, really? Where Payday 2 is generally superior to Payday the Heist is in its gameplay, customization options, replayability, and heist mechanics, like the whole stealth thing, as well as the inclusion of elements such as loot bags and crackable safe deposit boxes. Oh, and the whole multi-day heists thing is also something that many players are a big fan of, seeing that this adds to the game's longevity and complexity. For better or worse, Payday 2 definitely expanded on Payday the Heist, which is probably why it's enjoyed the success it has for the last decade or so. Payday 2 definitely has more RPG elements and is almost certainly more casual than its predecessor, but it's managed to hold its own over the years and remain relevant for ages, which is way better than the vast majority of games if we're being real here. And of course, Payday 3 is now on the way. So this probably won't surprise you too much, but Payday 3 will mostly be like its predecessor. With this in mind, there are some new features that make the game better or more refined than Payday 2. And how exactly does this upcoming title hope to achieve this? As was the case in Payday 2, you can tackle a heist head-on and go in guns blazing, or you can take the stealth approach. This time around though, there are some new heist phases that should make the transition from stealth to an all-out bullet storm a little more realistic and forgiving. For example, if a guard spots something suspicious or out of place, they won't immediately freak out. Instead, they'll search the area and try to figure out the source of the problem. So if you manage to stay hidden and avoid the guard, they'll return to their patrol as normal. But if you end up making a second mistake, the police will get called, and then if you have any hostages, the heist will enter into the negotiation phase, which will give you the opportunity to buy some time with first responders before SWAT arrives to ruin your day. In this way, Payday 3 will slowly ramp up the tension if you play carefully enough, so you should be able to deal with an escalating situation more readily since you can improvise and make decisions on the fly. Beyond this, Payday 3 features enhanced enemy AI as well as some all-new buff mechanics and more than 100 different skills that you'll be able to research and purchase. In short, the customizability that forms a major part of Payday 2 will be returning in Payday 3, but you should have even more options than you did before. For heisters who prefer violence to stealth, you'll be very pleased to know that this latest offering from Starbreeze Studios introduces some incredibly powerful weapons that you'll be able to use for a limited time to cause a huge amount of devastation to the surrounding environment and your enemies. In essence, overkill weapons function as power-ups that you can use for a while once you've managed to deal with a certain number of opponents. This should make gunplay and firefights way more intense and kinetic, so I'm sure most fans are really looking forward to this. Payday 3 is also set to feature private security modifiers that will be available on higher difficulty levels. These mix up the heist experience and are rotated on a weekly basis, so if you really want to challenge yourself and try out less predictable heists, then these modifiers should keep you and your teammates on their toes. Examples of modifiers include more guard spawns, security cameras that can't be destroyed or disabled, and the inability to use overkill weapons. For fans who like to keep things fresh, private security modifiers should be exactly what you've been looking for. Additionally, you'll now find that it's possible to grab guards and use them as human shields, which can be really handy if you want to avoid getting shot or need to move somewhere without having to worry about being attacked. Speaking of getting around, there are more traversal options than ever in Payday 3. You can slide, vault, climb, and generally move around more efficiently, so this should make dealing with enemies and making a quick escape that much easier. In the end, Payday 3 doesn't reinvent the wheel and more or less takes what made Payday 2 so great and adds a lot more features and refines the whole experience so that it's just that much better. One thing that's for sure is that the Payday franchise has endured and come a long way since its beginnings in 2011. In all likelihood, Payday 3 will receive a lot of downloadable content in the coming months and years, so I think you can expect some really awesome things from Starbreeze for the foreseeable future. It's still extremely difficult to pull off the perfect heist, but at least now in Payday 3 it should be a little more attainable. At the very least, you should be able to play the game according to your own preferences and get a lot more joy out of it in the end. Payday 3 is out on September 21st, 2023 and will be available on PlayStation, Xbox and PC. And there you have it. That's how the ability to carry out the perfect heist has evolved over time in the Payday franchise. So are you excited to play Payday 3? And what do you think about all the new additions and mechanics? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily gaming, VR and tech content. From me and the crew here at Metasquad, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Later!